19 July 1799. A French soldier stumbled upon a massive stone buried beneath the sand. The inscription on it brought a language, dead for thousands of years, back to life. And in that moment, the door to one of the greatest civilizations in human history was opened. How did the Egyptian pyramids manage to remain standing after 6 of the 7 wonders of the world had been destroyed? A pharaoh signed the first documented peace treaty in history. Another banned all the gods and invented monotheism until every trace of it was erased. And by the end of this video, you will realize that what destroyed ancient Egypt was neither invasion, nor war, nor famine. It rotted from within. But first, we're heading to the river where it all began. What if I told you that the civilization that has endured the longest in history is also one of the civilizations that has suffered the most destruction? 3,000 years, more than 30 dynasties, hundreds of pharaohs. This entire civilization was built upon the whims of a river. If the river flooded, it meant abundance. If it dried up, it meant famine. If it raged, it meant destruction. How did ancient Egypt manage to survive for 3,000 years on such a fragile foundation? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can bring these mysterious, obscure, and forgotten truths of history to light. Let me know in the comments which ancient civilization story you're curious about. I read every single one. Now let's get started, because the story of Egypt is far more complex and far more human than you might think. This is not merely a superficial account of the pyramids and the pharaohs. It is the story of how a civilization was born, fell, and was reborn over the course of 3,000 years. This is not merely a superficial account of the pyramids and the pharaohs. It is the story of how a civilization was born, fell, and was reborn over the course of 3,000 years. But we cannot proceed without asking this. If ancient Egypt was so organized and powerful, why was it invaded time and again throughout history? And why did it assimilate its invaders each time? The answer to this question lies in what the Romans, Persians, and Macedonians did a few generations after setting foot in Egypt. And once you see that answer, you'll look at the concept of cultural assimilation in a completely different light. Herodotus, the father of history, said, "Egypt is the gift of the Nile." This statement may sound like a cliché, but there is a profound truth behind it. The Nile flooded every year. When the waters receded, they left behind rich alluvial soil along the banks. This soil was so fertile that the vast majority of Egyptians needed to expend very little effort to feed themselves. Where did the remaining energy go? Temples, pyramids, monuments, civilization itself. The first settlements in the Fayum Basin emerged between 9,000 and 6,000 BC. People lived around a vast lake, practicing agriculture and raising livestock for their livelihood. Cattle, sheep, and goats were domesticated. Basket making and pottery developed. Between 3,400 and 3,200 BC, the hieroglyphic alphabet was invented. The earliest written records come from Abydos, on pottery, on clay seals, and on ivory fragments. Small tribes were transforming into cities. Cities were clashing with one another, and one of these clashes changed history forever. 3150 BC, King Nama united Upper and Lower Egypt under a single rule. This was not merely a political union. Nama held the title of ruler of both lands, and by combining the 2 crowns into a single headdress, created the double crown known as the Pshet. Each half symbolized sovereignty over a different land. Nama's son, Hor-Aha, ascended the throne and continued his father's military expansion. Yet he also harbored a deep interest in religion and the afterlife. It was during his reign that mastaba tombs were constructed, the precursors to the pharaoh's later magnificent monuments. Internal strife intensified during the Second Dynasty. Historians cannot even establish reliable dates for this period. Yet one name stands out amidst the chaos: Khamenei. The king who ascended the throne under this name, meaning 2 powers in peace, reunified Egypt, and he went down in history as the father of Pharaoh Djoser. And it is at this very point that Djoser's architect steps onto the stage: a vizier, a sage, an architect, an astrologer, and a man who, centuries later, would be worshipped in Egypt as the god of medicine. His name is Imhotep. When you see the structure he designed shortly, you will reconsider the answer to the question, what is man capable of? When King Djoser Caesar ascended the throne around 2650 BC, he was setting out to achieve something unprecedented in the history of Egyptian architecture. Imhotep began at Saqqara. First, a simple mastaba, a flat top, sloping sides. But he paused, thought, and added something, a mastaba upon a mastaba, a structure rising step by step. The step pyramid, the world's first known monumental stone structure, 62 meters high, the tallest building of its time. When Sneferu ascended the throne, he built 3 pyramids. One was not enough. The first collapsed, the second leaned. The third, the Red Pyramid, finally found the right angle, 43 degrees, Egypt's first true pyramid. Then came Khufu. The Greeks described him as a cruel tyrant, a despot who forced his people to labor and built his pyramid through slavery. But this image was wrong. The pyramid workers were not slaves, they were employed by the state. When the annual Nile flood made farming impossible, these people worked on major projects. They were paid wages, given beer 3 times a day, and treated when they fell ill. Their tombs were found right beside the pyramids, tombs bearing their names and inscribed with their professions. Stonemason, transport foreman, pyramid team leader. The Great Pyramid took 20 years to build, the only surviving structure of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and no mummy was found inside, no treasure, just an empty granite sarcophagus. By the end of this video, you will see that what shook ancient Egypt to its very core was neither a war, nor an invasion, nor a plague. It was a pharaoh banning all the gods in a single night and proclaiming the first state-sponsored monotheistic religion in history. And when you discover who that pharaoh was, you will understand why he is remembered in history simply as the heretic king. But first, we must understand how the age of the pyramids came to an end. After Khufu, the dynasties changed. Menkauri's pyramid is much smaller than the other 2. This was not a random choice. The treasury had been depleted. The Old Kingdom collapsed in 2181 BC. There was no single cause. A prolonged drought, crop failures, and a factor that had been eroding the central authority for years all came together. The growing wealth of the temple priests. The pharaohs had donated land and revenue to support the temples. Over time, the priests became wealthier than the pharaohs. And when central authority collapsed, regional rulers established their own small kingdoms. Throughout the first intermediate period, Egypt was divided into rival factions. There was no single powerful king. Consequently, there were no large-scale structures on the scale of Giza. But out of this dark period, the Middle Kingdom would emerge. Mentuhotep II reunited Egypt. Drawing on the power of Thebes, he defeated Heracleopolis, and the Middle Kingdom began. The 12th dynasty marked one of the most organized periods in Egyptian history. Water measuring systems known as nilometers were established. Taxes were calculated according to the height of the Nile. The Fayum region was transformed into an agricultural paradise through the construction of irrigation canals. Central wealth remained in the hands of the pharaohs, but the provinces also flourished. But the real transformation came about thanks to the Hyksos. This people of Asian origin settled quietly in northern Egypt. Through trade and migration, they grew in strength over time. And one day, they conquered Lower Egypt. The things they brought with them changed the course of Egyptian history: the chariot, bronze weapons, and new farming techniques. Pharaoh Ahmose pursued them, but he did not forget what he had learned from them. He used these weapons to build an empire. The new kingdom began. It was the period of Egypt's greatest territorial expansion. Textbooks gloss over this. In the history of ancient Egypt, a woman ruled as pharaoh in her own right. She led the country's most successful foreign trade expedition. She commissioned the construction of one of history's most magnificent temple complexes. And after her death, the pharaoh who succeeded her tried to erase all traces of her. In a moment when I tell you about Hatshepsut, you will see that people who have been erased from history can never truly be erased. In 1479 BC, Hatshepsut was initially appointed regent, as Thutmose III was still very young and could not yet ascend the throne. But Hatshepsut was not content with the role of regent. She proclaimed herself pharaoh. She wore men's clothing, she wore a false beard. In official portraits, she depicted herself as a man. She organized the most successful expedition to Punt in history. She had colossal obelisks erected at the Temple of Karnak. she commissioned the construction of a magnificent temple complex at Deir el-Bahari, which still stands today. She reigned for 20 years. After her death, however, Thutmose III had her name chiseled out of all the monuments. He had her statues smashed and her inscriptions erased, but the stones held the secret. In 1822, with the deciphering of ancient Egyptian, the erased name came to light once more. Hatshepsut could not be erased from history, for the traces she left behind were embedded in the stone. 1458 BC, Thutmose III took the powerful and wealthy kingdom he had inherited from Hatshepsut to even greater heights. Over the course of 20 years, he undertook 17 separate military campaigns. He extended his reach from Libya to Syria and deep into Nubia. Egypt was no longer a state, but an empire. His most significant victory was the Battle of Megiddo. A coalition of Syrian forces had gathered in the city of Megiddo. Instead of using the wide and easy passes, Thutmose III chose the narrow and perilous Aruna Pass. He took the enemy by surprise. He caught them behind their defensive positions and forced them to retreat from the battlefield. All the details of the battle were carved onto the walls of the great temple of Amun at Karnak. This is Egypt's first detailed record of a battle. In 1353 BC, during the reign of Amenhotep III, Egypt was at its artistic and financial zenith. But a problem was looming. The wealth of the priests of Amun had surpassed that of the pharaoh. His son, Amenhotep IV, found a radical solution to this problem. He banned all the gods. He changed his name to Akhenaten. He moved the capital from Thebes to what is now Amarna, and he proclaimed a single god, Aten, the god symbolized by the sun disk. The old temples were closed. The priests' wealth was confiscated. The name of Amun was chiseled off stones everywhere. This was the first recorded instance of state-sponsored monotheism in history. But the people were not ready for this. The army was not ready. The administration of the country was not ready. When Akhenaten died, a young son succeeded him to the throne, Tutankhaten. He was 9 years old. One of his first acts was to change his name, Tutankhamun, the living image of Amun. The old gods returned. All traces of Akhenaten were erased. But Tutankhamun did not live long either. He died at the age of 18. In 1922, Howard Carter opened his remarkably well-preserved tomb, and the world looked upon ancient Egypt with renewed fascination. 1279 BC, Ramesses II reigned for 67 years, one of the longest reigns in Egyptian history. During this period, he had his name inscribed on almost every ancient Egyptian monument, claiming the works of pharaohs from his own era or earlier as his own. The Battle of Kadesh took place in 1274 BC. Ramesses fought against the Hittite forces. Both sides claimed victory. In reality, however, it was a draw. And then the first peace treaty in history was signed. The two powers realized they could not destroy one another. They put an end to their hostility with a written document. This treaty, which hangs in the lobby of the UN building today, is the most tangible evidence of ancient diplomacy. And now we come to the most ironic part of this story. What ultimately brought about Egypt's downfall was not an invasion. It was not an external force. It was the growth of an institution it had created itself, the temple priesthood. Ramesses III was the last powerful pharaoh of the New Kingdom. He repelled the mysterious invaders known as the Sea Peoples, but the cost of these wars was heavy. The treasury was depleted. The tomb workers at Deir el-Medina were not paid their wages, and history's first documented labor strike broke out. The workers downed tools, declaring, "We won't return, pay our wages." In a few minutes, you'll see that the end of a 3,000-year-old civilization came about due to a budget crisis and the clergy's seizure of political power. This scenario may seem familiar to you, because it has repeated itself countless times throughout history. During the 26th dynasty, Psammetichus I briefly restored Egypt to its former glory. But in 525 BC, the Persian king Cambyses II conquered Egypt. The first Persian period began. Then came Darius II. Historians describe him as a more benevolent ruler. He supported the Egyptian temples and showed respect for the culture. Under Persian rule, Egyptian culture continued to thrive. In 332 BCE, a young man from Macedonia entered Egypt. He met with no resistance. The people welcomed him as a liberator. His name was Alexander. He was proclaimed pharaoh in Egypt. The Oracle of Amun recognized him as the son of Ra. Alexander the Great became Egypt's last pharaoh. After Alexander's death, his general Ptolemy took control of Egypt. The Ptolemaic dynasty began a dynasty of Greek origin, but respectful of Egyptian traditions. The last member of this dynasty was perhaps the most famous Egyptian ruler in history, Cleopatra VII, and with her death, Egypt became a province of Rome. The 3,000-year-old age of the pharaohs came to an end, the 19th of July, 1799. What would have happened if that French soldier hadn't struck the stone buried beneath the sand? This discovery, known as the Rosetta Stone, became the key to deciphering the hieroglyphic alphabet, and with this decipherment, a civilization that had remained silent for thousands of years began to speak again. Ancient Egypt still speaks today. The Nile River is still sacred to the Egyptians. Spring festivals are still celebrated. The culinary culture bears traces of ancient traditions. The Coptic language, the final evolved form of the ancient Egyptian language, still lives on today in church prayers. When the mummies were moved to a new museum in Cairo, millions of people took to the streets. When the procession of sphinxes was reopened in Luxor, the world watched. This heritage is not without an owner. Ancient Egypt was destroyed time and again over the course of 3,000 years. The Persian invasion, the Macedonian conquerors, Roman rule, each time something changed. But each time something remained: the river, the land, and the memory carved into stone. Perhaps civilizations do not die, they simply transform. And ancient Egypt is the longest-lasting, most magnificent example of this transformation. So, what do you think kept ancient Egypt going for so long? The river, religion, or the skillfully designed structure of its bureaucracy? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'll highlight the most compelling ones. If you want to continue exploring the depths of history and its misrepresented aspects, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.